Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality in a way that is extremely empowering. Speaking of exploring powerful perspectives, I'm super excited to announce the release of my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. If you're ready to alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level in 2021, head over to goldenkey.gift to download the audio or ebook as my gift to you by using the code POSITIVEHEAD. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Seth, Infinity Monk, here with me on the show. Seth spent 8 years as a monk while living in Germany and has literally come out of the cave to share his insights with the rest of the world. Seth, super excited to have you here, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, we got to connect recently at one of the epic events we do here at the Mystic Manor, and Seth led the good people on a guided meditation, and we connected for a bit, and I was like, what a exciting story. You know, as I tend to do, a lot of times it's like I'll start asking, I'll meet someone who really I'm resonating with, their story seems really interesting, and then I'll like, oh, hold on, never mind. I won't make you tell it twice. Come on the show and tell it. So here we are. I appreciate you making the time and space to do that. Before we dive in too deeply, I would like to start with my cliche opening question. It is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
My passion is guiding people through transformational experiences.
Beautiful.
And I think that would be the easiest way to talk about it.
Would you spend the next 9 floors trying to guide her through an experience?
Yeah, I wouldn't even try. I would 100% guide her through a transformation.
Yeah, experience. I like it. We got Yoda with us, folks. There is no try. Do or do not.
Yeah, you know, I really I believe that our purpose is already embedded within us. And our healing journey is already embedded with us because we are all born into families and generations and societies that have trauma, that have blockages, that have things that need to be shifted. And really, if we just look at our own mind, our own heart, our own nervous system, we already see our own path of development and our own path of growth and healing. So it's really pretty straightforward just to bring people back into their bodies and into their minds and say, hey, like what in here really needs to be opened up. So I really feel like this is accessible for anybody at any time.
Yeah. What a great story to like, hey, it's in there waiting to be unlocked. You aren't a special kind of broken. Like,
yeah. Jack Cornfield said, it's not a path from here to there. It's a path from there to here. You know, it's this path of returning back inside of ourselves. And it's really, I love that. Yeah, it's really clear. But I mean, I think we'll get more into all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good one. I haven't heard that one. So yeah, what I would like to do, if you could, is obviously a big part of, you know, well, I always start off asking people, share whatever ever is relevant about your backstory. And of course, you have a really unique backstory. Yeah, I'd love to just hear whatever from your you know, backstory, including your years as a monk, that feels relevant to kind of go into.
Sure. So yeah, again, hi everybody. It's all nice to meet you. So, you know, I was born in Massachusetts in Boston and lived in a suburban town called Andover. And, you know, had a pretty average life, except that I had a lot of paranormal experiences growing up that, you know, as a kid, I felt a lot of presences in my room, and I had occasions where I witnessed, you know, an object sliding across a surface. or just different highly strange and synchronistic events, or, every night I'd walk with friends into town and the lights would turn off right when I went underneath them in the streets. And just lots of different things happened to the point that I really was shown that there's more going on than we think. So I kind of dove into the paranormal realm. So I started looking into, like UFOs and ghosts and Sasquatch, and really looking into kind of these fringe topics to understand them. And only later in life did I realize, and this was actually when I was in college, I met a Buddhist monk. And after I spoke with him and really heard what he had to say, I kind of realized, I'm actually, although I love the paranormal, I'm actually looking for spirituality. I'm actually looking for this deeper understanding of reality and of what is this experience of life. And, if any of us were honest, we don't know what this is.
Right.
It's like, if we ever really just sit here and just, hit your arm and your leg and look around you and say, what is this? Like, what is this body? What is this experience? Where am I? What is this? We actually, on the most basic level, have no idea about what is going on and how we got here. What is this? How am I in this thing? So I was really looking for that deep answer, and I realized that it was spirituality. And, I met this teacher, this monk, and while I was in college, I was having a lot more powerful synchronistic and psychic and paranormal experiences. And I began meditating, and I got introduced to Reiki healing, and first learned about, the chakras and energy work and all of this. And, this was back in 2001. And I, slowly started growing more and more into somebody who was actively pursuing spiritual understandings. And when I graduated from college, this monk, the same monk, has a monastery in Germany, invited me to come visit. And not really knowing what I wanted to do, or, how I wanted to engage in the world, I went to the monastery. I thought I would be there for 2 weeks. I told my mom, like, be right back, just going to go check this thing out, and I'll be back in 2 weeks. And I ended up staying for 8 years. And this, yeah.
Mom's like, you didn't make it home for dinner, son.
Yeah, that's a whole other story.
I can imagine.
But yeah, as soon as I arrived there, and as I started really dropping in with the practices of Buddhism and spirituality, and I kind of had this realization. It's like, look, if you have, blue colored sunglasses on, and everywhere you go, it's blue. The only thing that really matters is to find a way to get those sunglasses off, find a way to get back towards clarity. And if you're in a situation, if you're in a place, a relationship, whatever, that you think that is the place for you to grow and to learn and to heal, then you owe it to yourself to stay there and go through that process for as long as you need to go through it, to be able to emerge a clearer, happier, more conscious human.
Right.
And so, we had an acupuncture and massage clinic there. So I was also doing massage every day for years, and starting to help with acupuncture, and started to learn about the mind-body connection as well. And really could see how most of the patients that came for physical ailments, it was because of unprocessed mental and emotional things and behaviors and beliefs and whatever. And we had retreats every weekend there. So I've led or co-led over 100 retreats as well. So really, guided thousands of people through transformational processes. And I've just seen how important it is and valuable it is, and how, I don't want to use the word easy, but I'll use the word accessible it is. And I think often we forget that that healing is possible and that change is possible. And we learn to cope and we learn to put up with things. And I often say, it's like, if you get into the car with your friend and the car smells, you're like, oh man, what's that smell? Your friend's like, what smell? Right? Because they're in it, so they can't smell it. Right. And sometimes we're just in something for so long, we don't even register that it's happening, right? We all have these blind spots.
Yeah.
And so to be able to be in an environment that is just totally geared towards streamlining the process of growth and transformation and healing, I really feel like I owed it to myself to stay there. And during my time there, I also I met Thich Nhat Hanh a bunch of times.
Oh, wow.
I lived with him in Plum Village for a few months, literally in the hut next to him. So every morning we'd walk out to meditation together. And
Oh, wow. How
you know,
cool.
yeah, and met the Dalai Lama a bunch of times, and different Buddhist masters from different traditions would come and live with us. So I got to study with teachers of all of the Buddhist traditions and understand their practices really intimately. So by the time I kind of reached what I felt was the end of my road at the monastery, I felt that I'd hit a bit of a ceiling. I left and I went to India, and then I spent about 2 years in India traveling around, and as you kind of alluded to at the beginning, actually ended up living in a cave in the Himalayan mountains for a little while, and really went for it. I was like, I want to be a monk,
You're
and
like, I'm going to be the real deal.
yeah, I wanted to try it. Like, let's do the thing.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I was armed with all of these practices, and I was enthusiastic, and I went for it, and eventually I reached this point where I said, I don't feel like I need this robe anymore. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like it's aiding me. It feels like it's actually getting in between me and the world in some
Right.
way. And so in 2015, I disrobed, and since then have been kind of figuring out, who am I now, which is, as a Buddhist, an interesting question to ask.
Yeah.
But really trying to figure out, what does all of this mean outside of a monastic context,
Yeah.
and in which ways is the world ready to access some of this information. And upon returning to Boston, actually the first ones that reached out to me were the schools.
Hmm.
That there was a big opioid crisis going on. A lot of kids were losing their lives, and they said, we've been, practicing mindfulness. Maybe you could come and help. So I went into the schools, and I started working, and this was like middle schools and high schools, and I started working one-on-one with, the troubled kids,
Mm-hmm.
so to say. And then the teachers started sending me into classrooms to just, I called myself the rent-a-monk, that they would just, they would just give me whole blocks of time where I would just sit in front of the class and just download into, this group of, 12-year-olds, and they'd send me into the
Wow.
next room, and I'd do it again. They'd send me to the next room, do it again.
How powerful.
And eventually the teachers were like, we need this too. So then I started leading these professional development seminars for the teachers to also start learning these tools. And then I started leading retreats, full on 3-day sleepover weekend retreats for entire school faculties, to really try to transform entire school systems from within. And then I was also actually picked up by MIT, and they said, oh, like, wow, you seem to know what you're doing. Come and support our community, because it's not just the troubled kids who are suffering. you
Sure.
know Even the kids at MIT who are like the straight A, perfect SAT score kind of, the whiz kids, they were killing themselves also at MIT from the pressure. So also I saw culturally, it's everybody. It's kids on both ends of the spectrum are suffering. The teachers are suffering and struggling. The parents are struggling and suffering. That it was so endemic. It was just everywhere. There was not a specific group that was struggling more than any other group. Everybody
Interesting.
was struggling in their own way. So it's really started just opening up more and more. And funnily enough, I've ended up in LA, a place I never thought that I would be. And I recently just started a job at a treatment center, where I'm now going to be, living and working alongside people in extreme crisis mode, who have addiction, who have depression, anxiety, and really getting into the trenches with them and saying, how can I bring this alongside, the lowest points of your life, potentially, to people who have trouble self-regulating, and help guide them through that. So
Wow.
that's kind of my journey up to this very moment.
Wow. That's quite the journey, my friend. Um, just hearing the fact that there are schools where they're bringing people in to do the type of work that you do think about if someone, if we could get a hold of every 12-year-old or 10-year-old or 8-year-old and get them understanding a lot of the power that lies in, mindfulness practices. It's really inspiring to hear that is even a thing.
And something that I really felt it was important to tell the kids, and if anyone's listening at home and you have kids, feel free to share this with them or even grab them and pull them over right now to hear this part. But when you're in school, you are in a constructed system that assesses you and grades you based on very specific criteria.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily criteria that have anything to do with life outside of school.
It's crazy.
Or
it's such
or
a narrow
in general.
band.
Yeah. And I saw this comic, and it was a teacher, and she said, to make it fair, I'm going to give you all the same test. Climb that tree behind me. And it showed the students, and the students were a goldfish, a dog, a monkey, and a snake.
Right.
And schools they were created, the system was created during the Industrial Revolution of how we see schools, to teach kids to be functional in factories in the workplace.
Right.
So they sit, there's a bell, you go to the next thing, there's a bell. If you're efficient, you do what you're supposed to do. You get, applauded. If you're not able to do that, you get penalized. There's a bell, you eat your lunch, there's a bell, go to the next station, and a lot of students, they put so much pressure on themselves to succeed in that very specific environment that they think that their worth as a person is dependent on their ability to function in this way. But academia is really about how well can you pretty much memorize sets of information.
Yeah, right.
And, even if you look at the workforce right now, the skills that jobs are looking for, they're things like, creative thinking, lateral thinking, teamwork, innovation. All of the most successful companies right now need young employees that are thinking for themselves and in new ways and becoming creative, and all of the things that schools are not teaching us. So it's very potential that you are going to excel in school, but when you leave school and get into the real world, you're going to struggle because you've just been learning how to do one thing, how to receive and process information in one way with one part of your brain.
Yeah.
Whereas there might be somebody who really struggled with school and it didn't make sense, and they felt terrible about themselves, and they had bad grades, and they had pressure from their parents and their teachers, and they get out into the world and they just explode in the best way, that they just do amazing things, and they're rich and they're successful and they're happy, and all of their gifts are finally able to be utilized. So
yeah,
I just want to give that message out to kids or even worried parents that, how well one performs in school, there is not a direct correlation to how successful they will be in life. And sometimes, again, it could be quite the opposite. A student could be excelling in school, but severely lacks social emotional skills, might be really struggling, and might really struggle on the other side of that institution. Yep. So I just wanted to give that out to the world.
Yeah.
Please share.
I'm glad that you brought that up. It's something that I've actually talked about before on the show. I've shared a little bit of a close personal relationship. My nephew, who diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, mild, form of autism, and he went to special schools. He struggled, did not do well in school, really thought he was, the fish trying to climb a tree, and like, oh, I'm disabled. I'm not as smart. I've got problems, my handicap, and it drove me crazy to hear a lot of this. And, even me and my brother would get irritated with my sister and mom sometimes for being a little too, like playing into some of that. And, as is very common with, autism or Asperger's, they can sometimes fixate on, a specific high interest, and in his case, it was rocks and gemstones and, fossils and things like that since he's a little kid. So, now he's 22 years old. It's like, he got up there, he started working his first job. He's had a lot of challenges when he was younger, and he got better and better and more pleasant. And now I would say it's one of the most sweetest, purest souls I've ever met, just so good and kind, but still having to work through a lot of these ideas that there's something wrong, and it's been a huge upgrade, new chapter for him in the last few months, because he got into thinking he would never go to, barely got through high school or whatever, got into a school that happens to be not far from where you and I are at, down in like Carlsbad area towards San Diego. That's like a gemstone diamonds, like they're very, acclaimed school. And he got in, and now he's, I think, in his second semester, and he's like the rock star student. Pun intended. Like every other kid is like, Evan, what do you think? Evan, the teachers, like, he's literally went and corrected things on the curriculum, like where they show like, oh, this one's a graded whatever, this particular stone. And he's like, he shows it to the teacher, and they're like, Evan, you're right. We got to change that. Like that's happened a few times. Like he's just like, he's in his lane. And so now all of a sudden it's like, his confidence is growing by leaps and bounds, and it's just so refreshing to see, because we're sold these bill of goods of who we are based off this narrow bandwidth of potential, and then if we don't fall into that category, now we're not good enough. It's like, I don't know, I don't remember the last time I used the trigonometry I learned in high school. It's like so yeah, I'm really glad you said that. And I just wanted to share that close personal story that's really just, he just started the school a few months, 4 months ago or something. And so we're just all, of course, super excited to see,
Sure. And,
how it's unfolding.
Who else has Asperger's? Elon Musk.
Right.
Richest man in the world. Who else has Asperger's? Mark Zuckerberg. So again, success in life is not necessarily reflected through that institution. So yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to hear, the amount of meditation and self-reflection that you've done is, as someone who is such a doer, almost to a fault, like, we all have our own unique path, but for me, I've been go, do, more on my plate than probably I should. It's like, I think it was Osho that said, everyone should meditate at least 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, you should meditate for an hour. And so I've definitely been that guy he's talking to, right? And so as someone who's been on, the other end of, every time I do meditate, I'm like, oh, Brandon, why aren't you, even more disciplined with this practice? Within this 30 seconds of the practice, and I've gotten better over the years, but I'd be lying if I said I meditate every day currently. Maybe every other, on average, something like that. And but as someone who's put in so much time with meditation, and I know there's so much energy out there around, well, I don't know if I can do it, or, all the stories around it, right? I'm just telling you my own story and experience, or I don't, it doesn't work for me, or, you're doing it wrong, or, I'd love to know what your assessment is on, how people should view meditation, how to meditate, et cetera. Sure. Yeah. So, I meditated in the monastery. We had meditation every single morning, 5 a.m., and we'd sit there. And so for years, right? 8 years. So for years I'd sit there and I'd be trying to do this thing called meditation, right? And I'd be meeting different teachers, and they'd say, oh, feel your breath, focus this, do this. And one day, this amazing teacher. His name was Ajahn Brahm. He is a British monk. He actually studied at Cambridge, super intelligent, and he ordained in the Thai forest tradition with Ajahn Chah. He sat, with me, and we chatted, and we had a retreat for him and everything. So I got to spend time with him. And I disclosed to him, my difficulties with meditation. And he is honest, a true meditation master, one of the foremost meditation teachers in the world, especially for Westerners.
Cool.
And he said, well, why don't you just throw this whole meditation thing out the window and just relax?
Mm-hmm.
And so I sat down to meditate, and I just started relaxing. And I had one of the deepest meditations of my life up to that point.
Wow.
So I talked more with Ajahn Brahm, and I really was like, cool, all right, he knows what he's talking about. So how does meditation work, right? I was like, so what is going on here? And what I came to understand was that, concentration is a word that we've kind of mixed up a little bit. When we talk about concentration, we think about math class, in school, like this thing that you're pushing your mind towards. You're kind of forcing your awareness to stay on one thing and to really get deeper into this one thing. But if you really think about what does concentration mean, I realized the real definition of concentration when I was eating breakfast at my mom's house, and she gave me some orange juice, and it said on the label, not from concentrate. And I said, concentrate. And I was like, what does a concentrate mean? It's about the density. It's about the amount of a substance kind of in one spot. It's a concentrated substance. There's a lot of it. When the mind is concentrated, it means that the mind is collected together. It's gathered.
Yeah.
Right. So concentration means that that the awareness is gathered together. There is a way to gather the mind that requires a lot of force. If you know power versus force, it requires a lot of energy and a lot of force, and it's not sustainable. And that kind of concentration is when we are pushing the mind to do something we want it to do. Right? A lot of people approach meditation by pushing their mind to stay with the breath, by pushing their mind to relax, which is kind of ridiculous if you think about it, right? Or trying to push thoughts away. And the example that I give about how that is imagine you jump into a swimming pool, and then all of these waves start forming around you because of the disturbance you made, and then the way that you try to control and stop those waves is by slapping them down with your hands. Yeah, this is what most people do when they meditate, right? Is that the very thing that they are doing is creating more problems for themselves.
Sure.
And if you jump in a pool and you want the water of the pool to become still, you need to become still. You need to stop. And that allows the mind to stop. The hack to all of this is if you look at the body, you'll see that the body and the mind are totally bound together. So all of the movements of our body is actually our minds expressing. So how can we understand the mind? Well, look at what the body does. When does the body become more present naturally? When it's connected to something that feels good. if you see an attractive person, whoa, you're drawn towards them. You smell something amazing, ooh, you unfold towards it, right? You taste something good, wow, you really show up, right? You're getting a good massage, you arrive in your senses, the mind comes towards it, right? Now imagine that you touch a stove and suddenly you realize that stove is hot. Where does your finger go? Away. You're walking barefoot and you step on a sharp object. Ow, what happens? You pull your foot off of it. That if there's something that's painful, we naturally try to get away from it. And if there's something that's pleasurable, we're naturally drawn towards it.
Right.
So if you are sitting down to meditate and you are creating an unpleasant environment in yourself, if you are forcing yourself to be there, if you are stressing about how good you're doing the thing, your mind is going to feel unhappy. You're creating stress and suffering, and your mind's going to try to get out of there. You're going to then start daydreaming. You're going to get lost in thoughts. You're going to get restless. The mind's going to try to escape. It's going to try to be anywhere but right here, because right here is painful. This is why many people struggle with meditation, is because they've built up a life of distraction, of dependency, of seeking pleasure and numbing from the outside world, that when they actually come inwards to meditate, it's uncomfortable. It's painful. And so they don't want to sit. They want to get out of there, right? So their mind contacts something uncomfortable or painful, and the mind wants to get away. So the hack is, how do we create a pleasant environment within ourselves, right? If a cat comes to your front door and you kick the cat's going to leave and never come back, because it's associating your house with pain.
Yep.
Right? Tony Robbins actually talks about this neuroassociative conditioning. We're associating pain to something, so we don't want it. But if that cat came to your door and you gave that cat, some milk or tuna or whatever, that cat's, oh man, this place is good. And it's going to associate pleasure with your house, and it's going to keep coming back automatically.
Right.
So how do we associate meditation with pleasure? How do we create that environment that the mind naturally wants to show up and be present? And this is what Ajahn Brahm was trying to say to me. How about you just relax? Yeah. How about, instead of doing this thing called meditation and giving yourself a whole new bunch of neuroses and structures and metrics on doing something right or wrong or good or bad or being the best or the worst or failing or succeeding, you literally just sit there and relax, as if you're on vacation, like you're sitting on the beach, like you're sitting in the sun, like you're doing the things that make you feel the best when you're able just to be. Right. So the trick to meditating is to just sit and smile and relax and enjoy, and let the mind do whatever the mind's going to do. It's going to wander. It's going to come back. It's going to wander. It's going to come back. But every time the mind comes back, it's going to start building a sense of trust in your body and your nervous system in the present moment. And it's going to say, it's actually not bad here.
Yeah.
And eventually the mind is going to start hanging out more and more and more until it starts remaining here. It becomes a sustained kind of thing. From there, the way to get to the deeper states of meditation, which is called samadhi, for those of you that are also familiar with yoga, we have the 8 limbs of yoga. Samadhi is the 8th limb of yoga. A lot of people are doing yoga training and that are, certified yoga teachers. I would say almost none of them understand samadhi, because samadhi is a practice that is actually kept alive by the Buddhist traditions of how to actually reach that place, versus just some theoretical sense of peace or oneness or whatever that,
Sure.
a lot of the yogis talk about. But in Buddhism, there's actually a whole understanding of how one reaches the state of samadhi.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that one gets there is following along with what I was just saying, is that as the mind starts to feel more and more pleasant, your awareness becomes more and more present. And this feeling of pleasure becomes like a glue, and it holds the mind into the present moment. All of your awareness, all of your consciousness starts getting sucked away from all of your other sensory organs. So you're not seeing anything anymore. You're not hearing anything. You don't feel your body anymore, right? That all of your consciousness is starting to get sucked into this pleasure. Eventually, the thinking stops all by itself as a symptom of this.
Wow.
That eventually all that's left is the spaciousness and awareness and pleasure. And you allow yourself, you allow the consciousness to become unified with this pleasure, and it becomes very blissful, very peaceful, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and it creates this positive feedback loop where eventually the awareness, the consciousness is only aware of presence and bliss.
Wow.
And it's this state of non-duality. It's this state of really just peace and relief. I think that's the best way I can describe it, is that, when I reached that state, it was just this experience of, this is what I've been looking for my whole life.
Right.
But I tried to find it through sex and relationships and adventures and things. And actually all that I was looking for was that sense of contentment and unification and connection within myself to that deep level. And it's a beautiful journey, and it requires a lot of trust and surrender, because it takes its own time. It's a marinating process.
Yeah.
If you were stirring a pot of water and the water's spinning in a circle, and you pull out the spoon, that water is going to keep spinning for a while. Yeah. And you have to just trust that just by waiting, eventually that water is going to slow down under its own accord. Right. And the friction that stops that water, the friction that starts to bring it, that movement, that momentum, that karmic force to a stop, is that feeling of pleasure. That feeling of pleasure from the mind, right? It's not a sensory pleasure. It's not the pleasure of eating a meal or getting touched. It's a mental pleasure. Mm-hmm. And the Buddha explicitly spoke about this, and he said, don't chase sensory pleasures through our senses, because they're not really lasting, and we've all experienced that. You keep needing more stimulation. But pleasure of the mind, pleasure of the relaxed, peaceful, concentrated mind, that is onward leading, that is healthy. And the Buddha actually said, if you get attached to the pleasure of the mind, there's only a couple outcomes that you can expect. And those outcomes are the stages of enlightenment. That you will literally just get sucked into enlightenment. Wow. Because you just know that the pleasure of the mind is the greatest pleasure, and it's healthy. It's really, really healthy, and it's really powerful, and it's strengthening. And for anyone that's meditated, once you come out of your meditation, you just feel solid. And the deeper you go into that, at the height of my practice, I'd be sitting for 3-4 hours just in total bliss, just in a state of total unity, and not even perceiving a me meditating. It was just space and bliss, and just floating on a cloud, for the rest of the day. And it's possible, and it's accessible, and it's just kind of about doing it and angling all of the areas of your life towards that. Yeah. If you're living out of your integrity in some way of your life, you're not going to have a peaceful mind when you meditate. Yeah. So we are also then encouraged to clean up our act, to make amends, to engage in virtuous behaviors that don't leave us feeling guilty or ashamed, which then again create an unpleasant atmosphere within us.
Sure.
So So that's when we start seeing how virtuousness and living in a good and wholesome way directly affects our mind state and our ability to be present, right? So quote unquote being good isn't just this thing from like a book and a religion, like thou shalt not.
Yeah.
It actually has very practical applications.
Mm.
When you feel good about yourself, when you feel happy about yourself and who you are, your mind will naturally start to become present. And your meditation has already begun just in your daily life, just in your being, right? If you're acting and behaving in a way that makes you feel unhappy with yourself, your mind is going to be trying to escape. And it's a downward spiral of, people that feel ashamed and guilty. They often turn to substances because the pain gets more and more and more and more.
Right.
So to actually get into these deep meditations, we have to start taking steps towards ourselves and towards the more painful and uncomfortable parts of ourselves, to feel them, to look at them, to release them, to heal them, to make amends, to shift our behaviors, so that we live a life that we feel good about, which then allows the mind to really start to sink. So in Buddhism, this is very important that our behaviors are directly connected to meditation. We say sila, samadhi, panya. Sila is our behaviors, samadhi is this meditation, and panya is wisdom, right? So by cleaning up our act, our body, our speech, our mind, meditation starts happening naturally. And as meditation starts happening, wisdom starts opening up. We start understanding how the mind works. Mm-hmm. And it starts leading that process forward. We go, oh, this is how to be happy. This is what peace means. This is what feeling good and healthy means. And we want more of it. And we just kind of get sucked down that channel. And it starts to happen all by itself. It's like creating a healthy habit. So it's a really beautiful process, but it definitely takes time, and it takes effort and work and a lot of patience and it's accessible. It's there for all of us.
Wow. That was such a beautiful journey through, your perspectives on meditation and what it means and how to access. Definitely impactful. I know people listening are feeling inspired to dive in, and super, super cool. I'm curious, I know, you then, with your meditations will sort of use it as a tool as well. Like for example, a lot of people think about, using meditation as a manifestation tool. And, so you're kind of going within to do work that will be reflected externally in a certain way. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. So this is pretty funny. This started off as a personal practice of my own, that every morning I started, thinking, how do I want to feel at the end of the day today? And this is kind of connected to the work of Joe Dispenza too, right? It's like, so I started feeling, what do I want to feel at the end of the day? And can I already start feeling that? Can I already start connecting my nervous system to the feeling that I want to be feeling? And then allow my experience to just be naturally pulled in that direction.
Cool.
So as I started doing that, I was asked by a local yoga studio here in Malibu, which is where I'm living, the Mindry. They said, we have a slot. We'd love for you to teach. And the only thing that we have open is something for like manifestation. Can you do something with that? And I said, well, I've never taught that, but it actually is connected to a practice that I've been doing for myself. Mm-hmm. So I started teaching this manifestation meditation class, and now I'm teaching it at 3 different studios and doing it at private events. And it's just kind of become like wildfire. It's just spreading. Yeah. And what this is really about, and I'll, share a little bit with all of you now, and you could maybe even go through this process as I'm saying it a little bit. But I have people, feel into themselves and reflect on what is the thing in your life that you are struggling with the most right now. Right. So maybe it's your physical body, your health, your thoughts, your behaviors. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's an interpersonal thing, a partner, a parent, a child, a friend, something from the past. Maybe it's something with like career or finances. Whatever the thing is in your life that you're really struggling with right now, that you'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking about, whatever the thing is that's causing you the most dis-ease, bring it to mind. And you'll notice that it is connected to a contraction in your body somewhere. That our body represents situations through creating sensations in the body that we call feelings. So I'll say that again. Our feelings are representations of situations that we hold in the body, right? Somebody abandons me, then my body creates a feeling that then I associate and call sadness, right? That I am sad towards this feeling I have now in my nervous system, which is being held as a representation of the situation that's going on. Okay. So we are, without knowing it, holding on the physical level, the body, the physical body, we are holding a contraction. We are holding a representation of a situation in our body. So to say this in another way, we are holding the vibration of something that we don't want, that is painful, in the physical reality. Because the body is the bridge between the mind and the material world. So if you bring to mind the thing in your life that is causing you the most difficulty right now, whatever it is, whatever the thing you're worried about, anxious about, stressed about, and feel in your body where there's that tension, it could be your heart, your belly, your back, whatever, your head, feeling that representation as a tension or a tightness. Breathe into that feeling. I always invite people, can you breathe into that? I'm nervous, my belly's tight. Oh, can you breathe into that? Where do you feel it in your belly? Oh, can you breathe into that? And as we breathe into that, it starts to create space. And as we breathe into that and start to create space, then I invite people, are you open to the fact that this can resolve right now? Are you open to the fact that you are healthy? Are you open to the fact that you are loved? Are you open to the fact that this job interview is going to go amazing? Are you open to the fact that everything's going to be okay? Right? Just kind of flipping the script a little bit. Are you open to the fact that things are different than maybe your contraction is telling you? And as I have people breathe into this space, I then again call in a little Joe Dispenza and I say, in space exists all potentials, all vibrations, all possibilities, right? So the situation that we're in right now is stressful, right? Our body's contracting. We breathe into that contraction. We create space. We're open to something else. And as we start breathing into that space, I invite people to allow in the possibility, allow in the vibration, allow in the potential of the thing that you want, of the resolution, of the solution to that situation. Kind of like turning a radio station, you know, you can turn to any station you want. You've had your radio station on a station you don't like. Now I'm saying, hey, what would happen if you turn to the frequency of the solution? Creating space, breathing into the tension in the body, and allowing in the vibration of the solution, allowing in, I often use the term your highest timeline, or the highest vibration, your highest good, your highest benefit, your highest happiness. So really just by opening up that tension in the body, breathing, creating space, and then just intentionally allowing a new vibration to come in, it starts to create a new anchor in your physical body. And we are literally changing the material world because we're changing the body, which is material. And as the body starts changing, if we change the body, we will then behave differently, we'll think differently, we will move differently, and then we are affecting the world around us. So we literally are changing, we are manifesting, we are creating a different reality, a different physical reality by releasing the contraction and allowing a new vibration in. And so this is a practice and a process that I do daily, that as I notice tensions in my own body, I'm like, ooh, whoa, like, what is that? What am I? And I breathe into it and I say, oh, am I open to the solution to that? Am I open to actually everything's okay? Am I open to this being different? And it's a really beautiful process of just opening and opening and opening and opening and allowing and receiving and receiving. And I'm leading this now to various groups of people, and it's been having amazing results, even just emotionally to everybody in the room, but also people are reporting that things are actually been shifting in their very lives.
Yeah.
So it's very empowering as well. And the way that I see it, it's also quite simple. It's very straightforward, and it's really based in our nervous system and our own visceral experience of reality. And by re-empowering ourselves to shift our experience of reality, we literally shift reality within us and around us.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of what that is for me.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love how thoroughly you explain and take people on the journey. And yeah, wow. I'm excited to play with that as well. Super, super powerful. I'd love to hear a little bit, one thing that intrigues me about all the time you've spent, going within, is, as everyone knows on the show, I love stories of synchronicity or serendipity or positive paranormal stories. And I got to think you have many up your sleeves.
Yeah.
And I would just love, you even mentioned as a child you were having a lot of paranormal experiences. So I'd love to hear, any, it can be one, it can be more than one, that you feel, that kind of jump out as ones that would be inspiring and fun to share.
Yeah. I would say that my most impactful one of those was when I learned the tool of Reiki, and I started giving myself Reiki healings as instructed by my teacher, and I tried to do it daily, but maybe I did it a couple times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I started noticing the strange phenomenon happening, that I would be focusing on my third eye and giving myself Reiki, laying down with my eyes closed. And then I would fall asleep. And eventually I would wake up. But usually when we wake up, you wake up and you wake up as you open your eyes, you're waking up.
Yeah.
But I would wake up into my body still meditating on my third eye.
Wow.
Right? As if I would kind of go somewhere else and then come back to my body still meditating. And I feel like I was just somewhere. And even sometimes I felt like I was just even talking with someone or someone's, but wouldn't remember anything, just, would kind of return. So strange things started occurring as I'd be coming out of these sessions. And the kind of culmination of those was that I went back to my parents' house. And this was when I was in college. And I was, self-healing. I was doing my Reiki session on myself. And, as I was kind of in it, I thought, oh, I forgot to light my incense. I had like a pack of, Nag Champa or something and I forgot to light my incense. And, but I was, deep in the session and I was like, well, too late now. And I fell asleep. And I woke up, into my body meditating. And then as I was kind of regaining consciousness slowly, I realized that I could smell incense. And I was like, huh. And I was, like laying in my bed and I opened my eyes, and on my dresser was my box, my pack of incense, and it was smoking.
Wow.
And I got up and I walked over, and I flipped open the little flap and I dumped out the incense, and it was a full pack of incense still bound together, like this bundle of incense. And the one in the very center was lit and it was burning inwards.
What?
And
Wow.
out of all of the strange and synchronistic and maybe there is an explanation for experiences, that one
Yeah.
there it was just so
Wow.
there's no way to really explain it. There are no explanations within our
Yep.
normal understanding of reality. And it just kind of forced me on a very deep level to accept that there's things going on that we don't understand.
Yep.
And still to this day, was that me? Was that some other being?
Yep.
Like who, what, how, why? So yeah, that still to this day just leaves me in awe, because I can't, I have no
Oh,
idea what happened.
what a trip.
um yeah, so that's one that I love sharing, because that's just from my heart to yours.
Yeah, yeah, that's
you know
definitely. And
yeah.
you brought up something there that I'm glad that you did, because my experience with meditating is more often than not, I fall asleep, and
Mm.
then my story around it is like, oh, well, that's not good. You fall asleep too easily. So, hearing you talk about falling asleep and coming back out, I'm just curious, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so in meditation there's normally two ways we go, and think about meditation in terms of balance,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like you're like riding a bike, right? You're trying to kind of like balance in this thing, and there's multiple directions you can fall in, right? So like one direction you can fall in is sleepiness, right? One direction you can fall in is restlessness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Overthinking, right? One direction you could fall in is sensual desire, right? You start thinking about sex or like a cheeseburger, or like something you want, right? One direction you could fall into is like anxiety, that there's all these directions you can fall. I have found specifically for sleepiness, when we sit to meditate, if we start to sleep, it's because we're tired. And
Mm.
it's really that simple. It's because, a lot of us, we wake up in the morning, we jack ourselves up on coffee, we're running. And when you give yourself that moment to relax, your nervous system just needs rest.
Yeah.
A lot of the best meditations that I've had is, I used to sit late into the evenings, and I would start kind of nodding. I'd be sitting and I'd kind of be falling asleep
Mm-hmm.
while sitting.
For sure.
But once I kind of hit that place of sleep enough times, the mind kind of got these little hits of rest that it needed. I would then kind of come back to center and be awake, and then have these really deep and peaceful
Hmm.
meditation experiences. So if you find yourself falling asleep during meditation, just know that that's because that's what you need, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And would I say that sleeping is meditation? No, but your body is saying, look, like I need to sleep. For me, restlessness, that's often a signal that you have a lot of things that you have left unresolved.
Hmm.
You have a lot to process, you have healing that needs to be done. Maybe you need to take out a journal and write all that stuff down to get it out of your head, get it out of your heart, so that you can then sit in peace. So a lot of these kind of ways you can fall, so to say, there are antidotes to them that I've found, ways that you can kind of get yourself back into the middle. um, More than anything, don't use meditation or this idea of samadhi and peace and all these things like I'm talking about as another way to beat yourself up about what you're doing wrong
Yeah.
or how
Don't
you're not
weaponize
doing
it.
it. Yeah, literally, meditation, look at meditation like sitting on the beach on a blanket in the sun. It's just like a thing that you get to enjoy wherever you are, whenever you are. You're never going to be like laying on a towel on the beach in the sun and be like, oh man, I shouldn't be falling asleep, or oh man, I
Yeah.
shouldn't be
Right.
like thinking about something. No, just fucking enjoy it. Enjoy what's
Right.
happening. Let the
Right.
thing
Right.
happen. And yeah, and the more that you enjoy it, the more you're going to want to do it, right? that
Yep. Right.
that
Right. Right.
you do it because you want to do it, not because like you're supposed to. It's not a new thing that's good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it's supposed to be pleasurable, and it only works if it's pleasurable as well. So
Makes so
really,
much sense.
yeah, so treat it that way.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Wow, this has been amazing. I just, yeah, really, really have thoroughly enjoyed this exploration with you. And I know there's going to be people that want to connect with you, follow your work, etc. What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, my hub of all things is my Instagram at the moment. It's like
Mm-hmm.
infinity Seth Monk. You can find me on Spotify. I have about 200 talks on meditation. So,
Wow.
I mean, I used to just teach multiple times a week and just record myself on my phone and put them out there. So, I mean, you can go way down the rabbit hole with me and learn a lot. And it's all free. And then I actually wrote an audiobook. I wrote a book that I made into an audiobook.
Uh-huh.
And I also put that on Spotify for free. It's called What If Everything Belonged? And there's a playlist that I made. So it's kind of the chapters are in order. And it's 44 minutes long. So, if you live in LA, that's like a drive. And you can just really listen to that. And I made it as an activation that you really go through a process while listening to it.
Cool.
But otherwise, yeah, I'm teaching around here. I'm at the Mindry in Malibu. I'm at a calming spot. I'm about to start working with Unplug, who has an app as well that you could do virtual classes. So yeah, I'm definitely here for it. I'm here to connect. I'm here to answer any questions. I'm more than happy to help people out with whatever they need. So yeah, just reach out, and thank you all so much for listening. And Brandon, thanks so much for holding the space.
Yeah, this has been a good one. I super appreciate you taking the time to come and share. And I do have one final question for you, though, and
Sure.
it's my cliche closer.
Okay.
In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life, according to Seth Infinity Monk?
Life is, just be with it.
Yeah, indeed. Good answer, my friend. Good answer. All of you, thank you for tuning your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts into another episode. Until next time, journey well.
Peace.
Also, before we sign off, I wanted to remind you to download the Golden Key audio or ebook as my free gift to you at goldenkey.gift using the Golden Key code POSITIVEHEAD. And please, if you enjoy my gift, leave a positive review on Amazon so others can find the book and unlock their lives with the help of the Golden Key as well.